Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody joining today's session as we look at the topic of unlocking value with big data. My name is Mark O'Loughlin. I'm the Managing Director of the Cloud Credential Council, the CCC, which is the home of digital ready professionals, where we continually ask you, are you digitally ready? More on that later on. We're joined today by Mario, who's delving into the ever-growing domain of big data. He's one of our lead authors here as well, and he's part of the CCC Expert Council. I'm delighted to have Mario here. Mario, thank you for joining. I'm going to just ask you to take a brief moment to introduce yourself and give some background to you. Now, I do appreciate we do have some interference on the call here, but I think we'll work through that. Hopefully, it's just brief. So, Mario, do you want to take a moment and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi everyone. Uh, Greetings from Malaysia. It's 7 o'clock here, a little bit late, but I'm glad to be on the webinar. I have been involved with big data for quite a number of years. Actually, even before it was called big data, nobody knew that that's the name, but large amounts of data. I have worked for one of the government lotteries in Australia. I have also then worked for various local, state government, and academic institutions, working on business intelligence and big data implementations, mainly in the area of risk in relation to payroll, HR, and procurement. I have been also teaching at one of the universities in Australia for a number of years, accounting information systems, and I'm currently involved with PhD research in the area of using artificial intelligence to detect synthetic identity fraud in online credit applications. And this is purely a big data exercise, essentially. Uh, I'm also currently heavily involved with training in relation to big data. I have developed some of the course materials that the Cloud Credential Council is using, the Big Data Foundations course, but also I'm involved with big data analytics and also big data in digital risk. So this is shortly a very short introduction on my involvement and experience with data, small data, medium data, and big data.
Fantastic, Mario. Thank you very much. We have a phrase around here to CCC. What Mario does not know about big data, it's not worth knowing. So thank you, Mario.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
So just a quick moment here. The CCC, the Cloud Credential Council, we are a global community-driven organization. We empower companies on their digital transformation journey. And we do this by offering vendor-neutral certification for IT professionals, and that includes cloud, big data, which Mario is going to talk about today, IoT, and blockchain. And we're going to see a link between big data and IoT, I'm sure, link between big data, IoT, AI, and all that stuff. Underpinned by various cloud offerings. CCC certification programs helps IT professionals and organizations to maximize the potential of digital transformation. And by working through CCC portfolio, individuals prepare themselves to become digital ready professionals. Now onwards, we've called this 5 steps to unlock hidden value. What we're doing today is more having a conversation. We want to get into Mario's head and extract out lots of that value that he said he has in there. There's a lot of experience in this. He's doing a lot of things, both commercially, academically. He has been involved in the CCC for many years. I said, even as part of our expert panel, lead author for the big data curriculum. So we wanted to use this session not to go through a big bunch of slides, but to have a conversation. So we're going to kick that off, Mario. I want to ask you a very quick question just to, I guess, set the playing field for the next 25 minutes or so. We've all heard about this thing called big data, and you've even called it big, medium, and small data. I love those phrases. Can you provide us with just a very short description of what big data is, in general sense and a meaningful sense as well, for our listeners?
Okay, thanks, Mark. Well, the way I see big data is not just about size. Okay,
Mm,
so size does matter, but size is also relative. For some organizations, terabytes are business as usual, and for
yep.
some other organizations, gigabytes present a challenge. So it's not about the size, although I have a friend who is teaching at one of the American universities, Professor Wasserheli, and he is saying that one of his definitions is if it fits in your pocket, it's not big data. All of us
Hmm.
have got mobile phones with 64, 96, and however many gigabytes. These are becoming ubiquitous these days.
Yep.
So this is not exactly big data. But big data is more about the speed of processing. If you cannot process the information on time to be able to take some action or to generate some value within the organization, we're dealing with big data. I'll give you an example. Most of us are using Uber, Grab, or a similar ride sharing app. So when
Yep.
you are standing in front of your hotel or your house waiting for your driver, you can see that you can see that little car on the phone or on the
Yes.
screen of your phone, right?
Yes.
And this car is moving, and eventually you get into the car. Now you need this information before you got into the car. Now this is big data, because in order for Uber or any other company or Grab to provide you with that information, they are dealing with structured data, they are dealing with map data, they are dealing with unstructured data, the photo of the driver, and so on and so on. But my point is, once you got into the car, you do not care about that information anymore, simply because you know where your driver is. They are in front of you. You only need this information before you actually enter the car. And this is the point of big data. If you cannot process the information on time when you need it, when the organization needs it, we're dealing with big data. That's
Hmm.
all.
Good. And that's, I guess, I think there's different views in this field of big data as well. One of those views would be from the consumer view. I'm the person that orders the Uber, taxi, or car. And as you said, I want to know where the car is, and Uber's crunching all of this using big data and algorithms and whatever that is. And then I no longer care once the car arrives. But then is there a second play and Uber want that as a value add. Is there a second play for an Uber then in mapping that part, first of all, where the customer is, where they reside, what time they order cabs at, related to the weather, related to concerts that are going on around the area, and then how they can, I guess, understand the client or customer more, the journey I take, where am I going, how long is it, how do I pay? There's another aspect, I think, of the organization using big data to understand their customer more, to understand how much more value we can provide to the customer. Is that the other side of this conversation as well, the consumer organization view of big data?
Oh, it is there, but also there are some similarities here as well. I just gave the example of the consumer so that our listeners can relate to it a little bit more easily. But it is exactly the
Yes.
same from an organizational perspective.
Yes.
If you remember, 15 years ago, you could actually kick off a database report and go home. And you
Yes.
arrive in the morning and you get the information and everything
Yes.
is good, right?
Yes.
Now that's not the case anymore, because when you type your Google query into the search bar,
Mhm.
Google
Yeah.
auto completes that query. Now this is big data in action.
Mhm.
Google cannot take 15 or 30 seconds to auto complete your query, because by that time you would have typed it in and you
Yes.
would have actually did something with it. So Google here is using big data in order to process it on time and provide value to their customers. Now, if you think about it from also another example, banking. So let's say that somebody makes a withdrawal in New York from an ATM for $200. And
Hmm.
then 3 hours later, somebody makes a purchase using the same card in London.
Yeah.
Now, it's not very easy to get from New York to London in 3 hours. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe in the future it will be. But
Yeah.
we need to process the data straight away and
Yeah.
act on it because this
Yeah.
is clearly a potential case of fraud. Same
Yes.
card in different locations. So this is not a consumer perspective anymore. This is actually the corporate perspective. Now,
Yes.
as soon as we see the second transaction, we want to be able to identify it as a potential issue and put a block on that card. Because if we wait another 2 hours, whatever funds are there in that account can be probably taken out.
Yes, that's a great example. This happened to me last year. Like that bank contacted me. Was I in some other part of the world? I said no, and they said, okay, we see you bought something local. You bought something over there. We've cancelled your card. We've got another one on the way. We're doing this. Here's what we know about it, and here's how you're protected. And they were doing that in real time. Where I think in the past, as you said, Mario, an organization like that, a bank would be waiting on a batch process to run overnight to be able to compare that.
Yes.
So I like that. I like what you said about those batches being run. You know, you'd run the report and you'd go home. Life was so easy back then, I think. But I think the technology gives us more this value type. You know, for organizations, we're continually looking for how do we serve the customer better, quicker, faster, and offer some more value. So that's good. Um, when you're saying that the big data requires lots of processing, which not necessarily existed in the past, is a lot of this underpinned by the various cloud technologies that exist today as well? Does cloud play a part in how big data is taking off and we're doing more with big data?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. With cloud, we have actually the amount of processing power that we need on tap.
Yeah,
So if we take Amazon as an example, of course, there are other cloud providers. I'm just using this one as an
that's okay. It's good.
example. Yep. Okay, let's say that we are processing big data and we need to deploy additional infrastructure. These days, that's very easy to do. At the
Yes,
click of a mouse or a couple of clicks, we can deploy a second piece of a second machine or third
yep,
machine or fifth machine or 15th machine. So we
yes,
can actually grow according to our requirements. Maybe when we start with big data, we are still a little bit hesitant, we're a little bit unsure. I mean, in an organizational sense, because simply the level of maturity is not there. But
yes,
as we mature, in terms of applying big data in business, then we can actually start looking at doing other things. And in this case, cloud is great because we can actually get whatever we need as much as we need it. We don't need to fork out $1 million
hmm,
upfront for infrastructure. We can
yes,
start with something small. Maybe we can start with $10,000 until we're running a pilot. We can scale up to a million eventually, but not
yes.
straight away. Or maybe we will never get to a million. So even from
Maybe.
a cost perspective, not just convenience perspective, it's great.
And I love that, as you said, the processing, the storage, whatever we need is on tap. Well, that's a promise of cloud on demand, scalable, and elastic. I think that's one of the true value propositions for cloud when you consider it's not cloud for the sake of it. It's cloud for doing something else. In this instance, for doing something like a big data that links back to your fantastic example of that Uber car or that banking in real time. And as you said, you don't have that big outlay. We have to buy all this IT infrastructure for something that may or may not work. We can use this, try it out. And I think organizations still have to mature in what they can achieve with big data and have that the high level thinking. So I always wonder that conversation about cloud, is it you go into cloud to save money? In this case, it's not. It's to deliver extra value to a customer or some kind of competitive advantage that your competitors don't have. And it overlays cloud then with the big data story as well. We'll overlay a bit of IoT shortly, but we'll get there. Um, I have this kind of it's. I just put this question out there. And see what you think about it. Is big data easy or is big data hard? I think I may go back to something you said at the start again about depending on the size of your organization, what you do with it. But just in broad terms, if someone was to ask, is it easy or hard to do big data? What would you say to that type of question?
Okay, I'll be really diplomatic here, and I'll say it depends.
Fantastic, fantastic. But in general terms, yeah, what would be some of the criteria for people to think about? Because they might say, oh, look, we've got this cloud, we've all this stuff here, we've got loads of data. Sure, isn't it just a case of analyzing it? And then you might have another organization stuck in analysis paralysis, where they've all this data and they just can't do anything with it. So yeah, just a couple of ideas maybe on how hard or easy it depends. What do you think?
Yep. Okay, so now big data sounds like a really high-tech initiative,
Hmm.
right? And it is. But in order for it to be successful, in my opinion, big data needs to start in a really low-tech way
Yeah.
with a piece of paper and a pen. And initially, we want to involve in big data initiatives not the technical people, but the business people. And
Mhm.
actually, sometimes I like to say we want to involve the real technophobes, the people who actually dislike technology, not to say hate it sometimes. Why is that? Simply because when we involve them and we start discussing potential business questions, they'll focus on the business
Yep.
or the business side and the business value without thinking about technology. If they don't like technology, they won't think about it, right? They'll think about the
Yes.
business. And
Yes.
once we identify what we need to do, so once we know what, we can then actually think of how. And this is when we need to involve the technology people. Unless we do it in this order, why, the business benefit, what, and then how, I think the big data initiatives will be really hard. However, if we follow this very simple prescription, why, what, and how, then it's good. I'm personally aware of several initiatives where big data has failed
Mhm.
spectacularly, unfortunately,
Yes.
simply because the business wasn't involved. So the
Yes.
data lakes are humming along nicely using some big data infrastructure, and
Yes.
nobody is using them. And I've spoken to students of people who attended my courses, past
Yep.
participants, and they said the problem is that we are technical people. We have implemented the infrastructure and now we are maintaining it well, but nobody is using it, and the business blames us for not
Yes.
working. Well, it's working. They've done their job. However, nobody in the business actually had, or the people who had to do their job, they haven't done it. So if we start from the business side of things, big data will be a success and relatively easy. If we start from the technology side of things, big data will be one big nightmare.
Well, that's fantastic. What I say to anybody listening here today and when they on demand this later on is that that alone is worth people's investment and time on today's session. Start with the why, the what, and then the how. Start looking at the business, and then and only then looking at the technology. To me, that's almost number one step to unlock hidden value in nearly anything, but certainly with big data. As you said, there's a lot of, in your experience, the big data lakes that are technically perfect but not delivering any value back into the business, and then it's a case of so what's happened here. It's probably a case of history repeating itself, and I'd be amazed at this. Again, we've had this problem in IT going back for years and years and years where it was technology focused, but again, if we could just step back a little bit and apply that common sense, three words, Mario, correct me if I'm wrong, why, what, and then how. Two very important
Yep.
questions before we even tackle the technology. We're probably going to get a good result or a better result than if we just dive straight in. I think that's a mantra we have at the CCC as well. Is what we try and teach in the portfolio of courses is that type of thinking as well. And today the technology really it underpins business, but it's all about the business and competitive and doing something different, whatever that is, or maintaining your market, but using technology for the business, not technology being used because it's there and with some aspect of what it might deliver. Fantastic. Um, Mario, to follow on from that, can you tell us, do you see some trends in the field of big data right now? You've just said one of them, which probably is a negative trend, but could be corrected, whereby, as you said, companies look at the technology first. There's a big data lake humming along, but not delivering anything. I would say that could be a trend that's out there that's common enough. But do you see anything else trending at the moment in the field of big data?
Yeah, actually, these are exceptions. What I see is actually acceptance of big data at the board level or at senior management level.
Yeah.
The awareness is there, and organizations are starting to take a really hard look at what they can achieve. They realize that big data will give them a competitive advantage, and they are
Mm.
starting to look how to leverage that.
So that's a key thing is I think that they're seeing it can give them competitive advantage, which I think organizations that need to have to look at. Business models of the past are starting to, be on shaky ground. They're not as solid. But I think would you agree that sometimes organizations looking at this, they might not know the answer, but they know they need to start looking at something like big data to ask the questions that you've just said, why, what, and then eventually how. So it's the why and the what. Why do we need it and what do we do? What can it do for us? Is that where they are in their
Yep.
thinking? Mm.
No, I totally agree. But in my opinion, the important thing is actually to start asking the questions. The answers will come with
The,
time.
the yes, with
Uh, yeah, I think it would be difficult to expect to know the answers without actually doing anything about them. But the thing is that we actually will start looking at this. We'll start looking at big data. We'll start looking at artificial intelligence because actually one of the big things about big data is to enable artificial intelligence in a much more productive way. And only recently I was having a conversation with very senior manager who attended one of the big data analytics courses that are around. And
mm-hmm.
I said, well, it's really great that actually somebody like you, who is at the very top level or one level below the top in an organization, is here. It is a large organization, financial services. And he said, well, actually, I'm here because this is one of my KPIs. I thought, well, how actually proactive approach this organization is taking, how proactively it's looking at the future.
That's a good KPI for an organization to have, and then to delve into technology domains like big data, IoT, to kind of start asking those questions, because it's not technologically driven, but it will require some level of technology to get that level of automation and extra productivity and whatever else they're looking for or competitive advantage. But it's not a direct technical KPI at a high level, but it can translate into the IT function at some point as to answering the question, how are we going to do these things
Oh,
that are now
absolutely.
measured at the
Absolutely.
top level? I like that. Leads me into this question here about enabling some of this. Now, I phrase this in such a way because in preparing for this, I had a look around and something in this area came up. So, do organizations who are interested in doing something with big data, and we said lots of organizations are now looking at that, do they have to hire a lot of this phrase data scientists, or can they start big data with people who have maybe other skills or not as specific skills as data scientists?
No, I don't think that they need to hire a lot of data scientists. I'm not sure that they even need to hire a single data scientist at the beginning. But unless, of
Yeah,
course, we're talking about pure technology organizations like Facebook, Google, and
yeah,
Amazon, it's a
yes,
totally different environment and proposition there. Uh, but I think that what organizations need to do personally is to get actually people from the business who are passionate about technology and actually leverage their passion and train them because you don't need to be a nuclear physicist to
yeah.
actually start with big data. It doesn't
That's
hurt if you are, but
Probably too much. The reason I asked that, I've been at a few conferences recently and I've been asking people about big data, and a few of the, as you said, those executive senior folks have said to me, yeah, we're upskilling, we've got a bunch of data scientists in, we've got them thinking about this, and and I asked them about, like, they're expensive people, they're hard to get. They said, well, look, we get in we're trying to get them, other people trying to get them, and all this. And I did have to ask myself, are they, that phrase, trying to boil the ocean, take on too much at that level? Because these companies were not the Facebooks or the Amazons or those types of companies that are heavily invested and do need people at that level. Um, I just they were like Ubers or something like that. The business wasn't something else. It wasn't highly technical. So I did challenge them with that and say, similar to what you were saying, are you looking at the right thing? Do you know what business challenge you're trying to fix here before you start go designing the big data lake and everything else that comes with it that probably won't deliver? Um, I also think, and I think you've kind of mentioned it there when you say start with the people, start with your people in your organization, start with the business, that there's an element of upskilling required maybe for people just to understand the basics, similar to what we do in the foundation courses at the CCC. You know them, you've designed them. I think just to get up to base level so that they have a common language and a common understanding of what this stuff can do and how it might meet a business challenge before the technology is thrown at it. So I do try, probably like yourself, to encourage organizations to say, you've got to use your people that know your business. Bringing in external consultants don't necessarily answer that at that level, but maybe some level of upskilling throughout the organization in some of these digital domains might be a good thing at the end of the day. Um, I wanted to ask you about IoT. And so we've now spoken this about big data, about cloud, you mentioned about AI, artificial intelligence. There's an aspect of IoT here as well, isn't there, that plays into this big data conversation? And is there a link you can make in your experience between IoT and big data into this?
Absolutely. Well, IoT is actually one of the big data types
Yeah.
because big data, according to the initial definition by Doug Laney in 2001, has got three characteristics: volume, velocity, and variety.
Yep.
And when we look at variety, we're looking at structured data, semi-structured data, and unstructured data. And the
Yes.
semi-structured data actually is the current IoT.
Yes.
IoT squarely fits with semi-structured, and probably they overlap 100%. Uh, so IoT is part of big data. IoT is actually probably one of the fastest growing segments of data that
Yes.
we'll need to deal with within the enterprise. Now we're becoming more and more interconnected. We're actually starting to put more and more devices, small little sensors online. We're trying to get some additional benefits, business benefits out of them. So it is big data, absolutely. I'll give you an
Yes.
example. Like intelligent electricity meters are coming near us simply because they make good business sense for the electricity generators. And these intelligent electricity meters are being polled on every minute or every 5 minutes. I did some training in the Gulf with one of the electricity companies there, and they said that their network is now 30% intelligent electricity meters,
Yes.
polling every 5 minutes, and they are looking at decreasing that interval. So
Hmm.
all these intelligent electricity meters are generating a lot of data, and this is a type of IoT. I was talking to another organization, a railway cargo company, who are actually generating per trip, per train, 160 gigabytes of data. This is a train trip over 4,000 kilometers, and they
Yes.
generate 160 gigabytes of data per train. And on a daily basis, they are running hundreds of trains.
Wow.
So actually using that data, they are looking at extracting some business efficiency there.
Yes, yes, indeed. I would imagine there's some business efficiencies, and then there'll be some customer advantage that they can get. So both sides of that equation, they can solve, and if they can do that above and beyond competitor, or just to increase the value people get from that journey, that's a fantastic story. So I think it all links in. Um, we're coming up on time shortly, but I wanted to just ask again, are there any common, I'll call it problems, but let's probably use the word challenges maybe, that you see organizations are facing or run into when they're doing something with big data? Now, you've covered some of the tips already. I think a fantastic one was the why, what, and then how scenarios. That's one. Do you see other challenges other than what you've mentioned, one or two other things that you might
Um,
be able to
yes,
outline?
yep. Yes, they are, and most of the challenges that I see or hear are not on the technical side. They
Mm,
are on the business side. Um, Getting access to various data sources is an issue.
yeah,
Creating big data repositories sitting in the center of an organization, which are cutting the better term across silos, is another
yeah,
challenge. Because if we want to do proper big data analytics, we want to be able to amalgamate all of the data in an organization. So basically, it's like a big data warehouse augmented with other data sources. And that's a
yes,
challenge.
yes, yes. Can I ask just one challenge on? I think because at least I'm in the European Union, with lots of people joining from various other parts of the world. The GDPR rules that that have been issued and have been out for a while now. Have you seen any challenge with that from any organization yet, or is there things in place that allow that to for people to process data across continents seamlessly, or is that going to be a challenge, do you think, going forward?
It will be a challenge, mainly in terms of how the rules are interpreted and
Yeah.
also whether the organizations are aware of them or not.
Yeah.
GDPR is a very European-centric legislation, which
Yes.
nevertheless applies across the world, simply
Yes.
because if you hold data, it's not about actually the location of the data, it's
Yes.
more about the location of the data of the subjects. So
Yes. Yes.
basically, you don't need to be in Europe. I'm a European citizen as well, living in Australia. So actually, that actually makes every single organization which has my data falling
Yes.
under GDPR. And
Yes. Yeah.
here in Malaysia, when I go for a meeting somewhere and they take a photo of my driver's license, which actually has got my Australian address on it, nevertheless, it falls under GDPR because actually I'm a European citizen. So GDPR is not just applicable to European entities. And this is a big misconception, but I think that to discuss this one, we'll need two more webinars of that length, Mark.
We probably will. I just wanted to mention it there because, as I said, I think there is a big misinterpretation of GDPR in a lot of organizations that they probably
Yep.
should step back and understand it a bit more. But again, that's for another day's conversation. Um, Mario, I'm going to finish this section on just a recent case study that I've seen. I'm just going to read this out very briefly and just see what comments you might have on it. It's about Salesforce
Yep.
acquiring Tableau, just as an example. So the language here is interesting. Salesforce is to acquire business intelligence BI virtualization software provider Tableau for, let's say, a couple of billion, with the aim to improve customer journeys through the fusion of AI, artificial intelligence, and big data. And it goes on to talk about value add and all that. So within that sentence, we've got business intelligence, BI, artificial intelligence, AI, customer journeys, big data, all rolled in, underpinned by cloud technology, SaaS, all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot happening there. Any comments on what Salesforce is trying to do with Tableau on this big data journey?
Okay, well, my one of my guesses would be that actually they are trying to deliver the information to a customer in a better way.
Yes,
Tableau is very strong in visualization.
yes,
So the question here is not just to be able to get the information, but actually to allow the potential users of the information to act on it in a better way.
Yes. And I
And
think,
also, I think, yep.
no, go ahead, finish. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that also there is a big aspect of self-service where we want actually not the technology people, but business people to be able to slice and dice the data that we have.
Yes, that's my read of it there. As I said, they've led with business intelligence. It's for business. It's underpinned by crunching the numbers, but giving that back in some more meaningful way for self-service, an element of AI. I wouldn't be surprised in the future if they come up with various IoT type sensors and type things, gadgets that they'll be able to plug into this as well. For the organization that plugs into Salesforce, into the Tableau, and pulls out more and more information. Mario, that's fantastic. In the interest of time, we'll be up on time shortly. I think for me, there's as we wanted 5 steps to unlock hidden value. I think just in this, rather than going through slides, in this conversation that we've had today, for me, you've certainly unlocked. There's 5 steps of hidden value within there. Massive takeaway today: why, what, how. Very simple, very effective, but again, can be a challenge in organizations who's jumped in first, and then some of the other things. So I hope people get a good feel for big data. Might go back and pull out some of those very important points that you've given us there. So fantastic for that. I'm just going to close off with one or two um, things here just on the Big Data Foundation, which Mario was instrumental in bringing forward for the CCC. Big Foundation is essential, as we said, to everybody involved in use implementation of data of some point, but more importantly about addressing that business. The first question, why? Why are we doing this and what are we going to do? And for us in the CCC, Big Data Foundation helps organizations start that conversation before the technology conversation. So it's the basics of big data. There's some stuff on the screen there. Lots more details, syllabus, and whatever else are available on the CCC website. Just so you know, CCC is a global community-driven organization. We empower companies on their digital transformation journey, and we do this by offering vendor-neutral certifications for professionals, which include cloud, big data, IoT, and blockchain. And you've heard in our 30-minute conversation with Mario there, big data pulls in from cloud, IoT, maybe some form of blockchain in the future, artificial intelligence, and all those other things. Just a review of our portfolio. It's up on our website. We won't labor it here today, but one note is the CCC portfolio. It's vendor neutral. It's common now for many organizations to have multiple clouds, IoTs, big data, all these interwoven, and I guess supported by many different vendors and vendor offerings. So we took a vendor neutral approach, and the CCC vendor neutral accreditation we believe is important to make these vendor products and services work together. The CCC does not compete with any other certification. We complement them. And just to back that up, our mission statement there, I'll just read from the bottom. Together we accelerate successful digital transformation through world-class training and certification. So just before we finish up, just want to leave a question for you all. Want you to ask yourselves of yourself and your organization, are you digital ready? Are you big data ready? And some of the things Mario has brought up there will have us think about that. So listen, just Mario, if I'm going to bring the call to a close, I'd like to say a final thank you once again for joining us today, for sharing the wealth of knowledge that you have. Indeed, I'd like to get you back, maybe look into some more of this another time. And Mario, just to close, as I opened, and I firmly believe this, what Mario does not know about big data, not worth knowing. I'm sure you're in agreement with that yourself, Mario.
Thanks a lot, Mark. It was a real
Okay.
pleasure to be here as always.
Okay. Thank you very much. I know it's late where you are today. We'll leave the call there. Thanks for joining us. Everybody, thanks for joining us and for listening into what Mario had to say. We hope it will be of good use. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you are.